The Weed of the Week, sponsored by Ag PhD Field Day 2011. Attend the free Ag PhD Field Day July 22nd on the Hefty Farm near Baltic, South Dakota. You'll see dozens of plots, a live tiling demonstration, a ride and drive session with new technology, a host of celebrities, and Brian and Darren showing you what's working and what's not on the farm. This will be our biggest event ever, so don't miss it.
Our Weed of the Week is volunteer Roundup Ready corn.
Well, you throw that trick in there, Brian, because if you just said volunteer corn, well, Roundup will kill that. But, you know, if it's volunteer Roundup Ready corn, oh, well, then you can't use Roundup. That's really the only thing it takes out of the equation.
Now, wait a second. Let's change this right now, Darren. Let's make it volunteer Roundup Ready and Liberty Link corn.
Okay, so volunteer Smart Stacks or Quad Stack corn. All right, now we've got a challenge.
I don't think we've ever changed Weed of the Week on the fly like that before.
Well, we can do it. That's okay. You know, well, I would say this. Any volunteer corn that you have, just assume that it's resistant to Roundup and resistant to Liberty. And you know what? You don't need to be scared at all. It's just like these Roundup resistant weeds. I'm not scared of them. There are plenty of options out there, and there are certainly plenty of options for volunteer corn.
There are in some crops, but not in corn. One of the things I loved when Roundup corn came out and then Liberty corn came out is we rotated every other year in our continuous corn fields. So one year we had Roundup, the next year we had Liberty. Well, just about all the straight Liberty numbers, they're gone. So now I lost that option in corn. I hate that. I really don't like that at all because now I've got to rotate corn and soybeans, and I didn't want to do that.
Let's talk about that though. Let's say that, you know what, I really need to raise continuous corn. I've got cattle, I've got an ethanol contract, and I've got to make sure I have plenty of corn. That's fine if you need to go corn on corn, but you need to be very cautious this fall when you're harvesting this year's crop. What you need to do is make sure that you don't let that corn get too dry. And when you're out there, do everything you can to avoid dropping ears and having that corn shell and just basically explode when it hits your corn head. You can't lose seeds and you can't lose ears if you're going to control volunteer corn in a corn-on-corn situation.
Well, with volunteer corn, it's a huge yield robber. I don't care what crop we're talking about. Believe it or not, this might be the worst weed that we've got in the world. Seriously, it robs more water and nutrients out of a soybean field than any other weed we've got. So don't just think that volunteer corn is an eyesore. You've got to get it under control. Fortunately, it's easy to do in the broadleaf crops like soybeans.
Okay, well in soybeans what we do is we'll just simply use a post-emerge treatment like Select Max, for example. There are a bunch of different grass type killers.
And it's the same thing with a lot of the other broadleaf crops. You can just use a grass killer. It's relatively easy to control, but make sure you're controlling it early in the season, because if you let that grow a little bit bigger, it's harder to control, and it hosts corn rootworms going into next year.
So this year, if you see some volunteer corn in your fields, just assume that it's Roundup resistant and Liberty resistant, and go with one of the grass killers to take it out in your broadleaf crops. And in corn, you have to manage things at harvest so you don't drop kernels or ears.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.